So this really nice 2003 Mach 1 showed up for sale, and I posted it on our Facebook page with my friends in our car club and told them that somebody should get this car because it's so beautiful. It was a daily driver car and had 140,000 miles on it, but it was absolutely beautiful. In fact, it was just as nice as my 75,000 mile Mach 1. And that says a lot for it because my Mach 1 looks like a car that would only have about 30,000 miles on it. But anyway, had the beautiful floor mats. The car was lowered just right. It was very nice paint. You could tell it was taken care of very well. The interior was almost flawless. These cars, you know, the bolster wears really bad on them when they get higher mileage, but this one was in really good shape. The older gentleman who owned it took really good care of it. He used it as a commuter vehicle. He put a lot of miles on it, but he took really nice care of it. Kept it garaged. The clutch was super smooth. It had the SLP cat back. It was everything you would want in a nice, affordable Mach 1. So my cousin jumped on it, decided he'd buy it. This is the same cousin who has the black Bullet. So he got the car and we got together. That's Danny Johnson's red Mach 1. I didn't have mine at the time and my Bullet there. And we went out and had some fun with it, took pictures, just cruised around, did what we usually would do. He changed the oil on it, took care of it. At first he was just really good to it. Here's the oil filter adapter gasket that needed to be replaced. It was leaking oil. It's common on these cars. But you could see it in the garage there with his black Bullet. And you could see how excited he was to have it. He really did care about it. He cared for the Bullet too. He loved both those cars. I remember driving it around and thinking, holy cow, this clutch is perfect. Super smooth, transmission shifted perfect. It was a very nice driver. I got jealous. I really wanted to have it myself. But it wouldn't be until later until I picked up my own red Mach 1 as my new daily driver. Well, as time went on, just like his black Bullet, he had to keep it at my house for a little while. He couldn't really pay for it, couldn't insure it. He wasn't taking very good care of it, so I'd wash it and try to keep it as nice as I could. And he couldn't really pay me to store it there, and we came up with an idea that we'd swap some of the aftermarket parts onto my Mach 1 to help pay for it. And so we went ahead and swapped out the lowering springs, and it had these eye box on it, but the problem was one of them was broken. You can see here it was cracked in half. But we got it all apart, and my friend actually gave me some extra front lowering springs he had from his car left over because he went with adjustable front strut coilovers for racing. And so I got the springs and the caster camber plates, and he got my Mach 1 stock stuff, which was still in really good shape, half the miles. But anyway, I drive the car around a little bit. Like right here, I met up with Danny Johnson at his house, and we take it out and drive it around a little bit just to keep it good, keep the oil moving around in it, keep the seals nice. Drove it to work once in a while, even though the car was mostly sitting in my side yard. Danny Johnson would come over and we'd work on the cars together. It was fun to have two Mach 1s that were the same color because my brother and I had the red and the blue Mach 1 already. But anyway, it leaked diff fluid pretty bad, and we'd always jack it up and top it off. And here's a picture of it sitting in my side yard. This is a little walk around video of how nice the car actually was. I would get pretty upset that the car was so nice and it was sitting so much, and you know, he tried to put it for sale, but the problem was he kept refinancing the car, so he owed way too much on it. Nobody was going to be able to pay for the car for what it was and how much he owed on it. But look at this paint. It was absolutely beautiful. The wheels were in great shape. The roof was good. Everything was just beautiful. I was getting pretty jealous. I wanted to buy the car for myself and use it as my new daily driver, especially since my Bullet now was supercharged and had the built engine. Going inside the car, you can see how nice it was. That bolster wear is usually shredded on a car with this many miles. But the seats were in amazing shape. He had this cool Mach 1 coin delete that he had laser etched with a piece you can buy on eBay, and then he took it to the mall and had it done. I mean, the interior was just flawless. The seats were so nice. I talked with him about buying it a lot, and it just came down to the fact that he owed way too much on the car, and there's no way that I'd be able to pay him what he owed on it. So it stayed at my house under a cover for a long time until this is the bad part. My cousin called me one morning and said, I lost everything at the casino. I have no money to pay for my car. I have no money for anything. It got really depressing. He's been in and out of this gambling addiction for a while, and we talked about it for a little bit, and he said, look, I'm not going to be able to pay you what I owe you for the car that I've been keeping at my house for a year now. And so he said, how about you just take anything you want off the car and trade it? Not strip the car, but just trade it for something that might be in a little bit better shape if I want it before they come and get it. So I said, well, my Bullet has a really good transmission, but it has a little bit of a vibration to it, and I decided that I'd like to swap transmissions. So I asked my friend, because he had access to a lift, if we could go over to a place he had connections with and get the transmission off both cars and swap them real quick. We had done this a lot with our cars, so it wasn't really that big of a deal. But we got the transmission off the Bullet and realized that it was just the pivot ball on the clutch fork that was worn, causing the vibration. And I really liked the transmission that was on the Bullet. It shifted just fine, so I decided, you know what, I'm just going to keep that transmission, swap the pivot ball out real quick, and order a new one for the Mach 1's transmission. And then my friend and I kind of talked about it, and he's like, well, if he's losing the car anyway, maybe you should let him switch me transmissions, because his Silver GT had an issue, and third gear wasn't quite right, and he wanted the transmission for himself, and I thought, well, it is kind of mine at this point. It's been given to me on trade, so I went ahead and let him have it. I did feel kind of guilty that we were using his lift and his time, and he was helping me, so I went ahead and said that was okay if he swapped. But the story gets really long here, really dirty. There's kind of some lies going on between us. Zach found out and he didn't want my friend to have the transmission. And so he got the police involved, told them he wanted it back. It just got really dirty. And unfortunately, my friend ended up forfeiting our relationship over the whole deal. Even though it was between my friend and Zach at this point, my friend decided that he was going to take it out on me. He didn't want to be friends with me anymore. And I was actually pretty shocked that he turned out like that against me, because we were really good friends. We had done a lot of racing together. We had done a lot of car stuff together. I mean, a whole lot of stuff. And it really hurt my feelings that he broke our relationship over this. But I understand where he's coming from. I'm not trying to throw him under the bus or anything. I'm just saying it was a very terrible situation. Zach's parents got upset. They got upset with my parents. Everything got dirty. And so my friend decided to give the transmission back, or so he said he would. And he told everybody he'd swap the transmissions back. And he ended up selling his car and claiming that he had traded the transmission back and that he had it sitting somewhere. So here's the Mach 1 now with no transmission in it. So hooked it up to a four-wheeler and he parked it on the lot where the lift was, and it sat outside for like a year almost. It sat there in a field, and he kept telling us, oh yeah, we're gonna get the transmission in, we'll get it in, we'll get it in. And I'd say, okay, I'm making time, I'll come over there this weekend, let's do it. And he'd break plans on me, and he'd say, let's do it next weekend. So I'd get plans ready for next weekend. And the reason why he kept breaking plans is because the truth was he didn't have the transmission anymore. He had put it on his GT and sold the car. And so here the Mach 1 sat in the dirt, in the sun. Paint started fading. You could see the tumbleweeds on it, spider webs, everything. And it sat like this for, like I said, about a year. And I finally got down to the point where I said, look, I'm going to come get the car. I'll put it back together myself without the lift. Just give me the parts and I'll come over and get it. And he kept stalling, and he wouldn't make time with me, and he'd ignore my phone calls and everything. And this started to come into a bigger issue of him holding the car from us now. And so now he didn't want us to find out what he had done, and he knew we were just about to come get the car, so he actually called a repo company to come take the car. And they took the car and they locked it up, and we found out where it was eventually. We were able to go over, and my cousin paid a huge fee to get it out, and he got it back before they repossessed the car. So we finally got the car back. We had most of the pieces. I went back to the shop to get the remainder of the pieces, and my friend wasn't there, but the people there were instructed by him to give me a really hard time and rough me up, and it was really nasty, but I ended up getting the pieces, and here we found in the trunk was the transmission. But as we looked it over, it's just what we suspected. It was a T45 out of his GT with the broken gear in it. So it really wasn't the right transmission, and now we had a car with a broken transmission. Now in the junk pile out back at the shop where the car was, Zach's transmission from his Bullet was there, and my friend had that in his GT for a while, and he said we could take it, so we did, and it still worked, but you know, first gear made some noise, so we ended up putting that back in the Mach 1 now. So we looked over the Mach 1 and you could see how filthy the interior is. From sitting so long, a cat had gotten inside of it and crawled all around, got mud all over the place. The car was still in great shape, but it was really dirty, and the paint was starting to fade a little bit. But overall, it looked pretty good, and Zach was excited to have it back, and so were we. We're glad that the car was in better hands now, and the shaker was really faded. He ended up painting it really nice, but here's some pictures of the car. It sat at my place for a while until we could get to it. Just real dirty. I'd go out and wash it, but it'd get dirty real quick. And anyway, we got together and we got with Zach and we got the rest of the parts, the drive shaft, everything, and we worked real hard. We got the transmission back in. Danny Johnson came over and helped, and you know, the battery was dead. I stored it at my place and kept it under the carport until we could get to it. Did some maintenance on it, and here's a really funny picture. Look at these tires. That's what the inside of the tires look like. If you remember from the story of the black Bullet that my cousin owned, he came and switched these tires off his Bullet onto the Mach. That's why it has Bullet wheels. And so that's, you can see how terrible those tires were. But we got the car all lifted in the air. We took care of the maintenance. We cleaned it up real good. Washed it, waxed it, clay bar, everything. Got it looking really good again. So Zach started driving it around. It had the Bullet wheels on it now. And this is the first test drive here with the transmission. We got it going real good and we're excited. And he took it home and he called us an hour later and said, "Hey, my fuel pump died." He said, "I'm stuck in the Walmart parking lot." So Danny Johnson and I came to the rescue with our tools, my Tahoe, and we got under there and we swapped the fuel pump out in like less than 2 hours, I'd say. This was really difficult too because I had been at work all night. You know, I'd worked 2 jobs. I had no sleep. I was extremely tired, but we came to the rescue and we took care of it. So there's Danny Johnson in there. He has this video on his YouTube channel. It was really cool. And when a car sits that long, the ethanol in the gas turns to gum and it just ruins the pumps. So anyway, we got that all squared away. We got a new pump in it. And then we got him out and started cruising. So here's my Mach 1, Danny Johnson's Mach 1, and my cousin's Mach 1. And it was real fun to get the 3 of them together because we're all cousins and go take pictures. And this is one of our favorite places to meet up. We call it the Cove. It's a nice place at a convention center, big parking lot, and we meet here with our friends a lot. So anyway, here's some really cool pictures. Mine's the one with the blacked out deck lid panel and deep dish wheels. But it was fun to get the cars together and finally be able to cruise, because I had picked up my red Mach 1 to be my new daily driver. I had mentioned how I really wanted Zach's, but I just couldn't take it for what he owed on it, and I ended up getting mine, and I love mine. I love it. I drive it every day. So it was nice for him to have the car back. He had lost his Bullet, which is in the Bullet 140 video that I made recently. But anyway, here's our cars all together, working on them, cleaning them up and stuff. And Zach bought some new headlights, fog lights. We had fun installing them together. He'd be like, "What's the best way to get these in?" And we worked at it really hard, and I knew, well, just take off the front bumper. So we took the front bumper off, and he got a short shifter, because that's one of the only things that was really annoying, is the long throw on the stock shifter. And so we put that in together and just had a lot of fun. But he'd come and go, and we wouldn't see him for a while, and then he'd get into trouble and he'd go off with his friends and he'd move back up to his hometown, and We wouldn't see him or the car, but then he'd come down and visit. Like, here's where we used to work. If you remember in the other video, it's where we parked our Bullets together. So now we had our Mach 1s. Even though he didn't work there, he'd just come meet me on the way to work. But anyway, he had to travel a lot with the car, and so he was driving a lot, you know, to his hometown and back to our town, back and forth, back and forth. Turns out he went 20,000 miles without an oil change, and he was racing the car around, and he, again, spun a bearing, ruined the engine on the Mach 1, and now it's at a friend of his shop where it's, I don't know what's going to happen to it. So we'll see what happens to the car. Again, it's lived a hard life, and only time will tell. Anyway, thanks for watching. This is a crazy story.